You know what I got the other day, Pete? Stephen King's latest. Want to borrow it?
Do you know who you're talking to?
What do you mean?
Andy, when's the last time I read a paper book? It's been decades. I would much rather use Kindle, or better yet, Audible.
What am I thinking? I don't read paper books anymore either. I'm an audiobook guy all the way. For those looking to listen to the books behind the films that we talk about here on Movies We Like, not to mention all the other podcasts in the Next Reel family, get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thenextreel.com/audible.
There are so many great adaptations from Movies We Like available in audio form.
Early on, we covered Casino Royale with director Matthew Gratzner. You went through all of the 007 books on Audible, right?
I did indeed. What a series. We also covered Room with legendary Dee Wallace and Never Let Me Go with costume designer Alana Moorehead.
We chatted about Fat City with cinematographer Sam Levy and Silver Linings Playbook with the great composer Harry Gregson Williams.
101 Dalmatians and Bambi.
Apocalypse Now, There Will Be Blood, The Thin Red Line.
There's so many great adaptations with so many great guests, and you can get all these as audiobooks on Audible, along with thousands of other great reads.
Producing this podcast is a lot of fun, but it does take a lot of time. We have already dropped the dynamically inserted ads because they are so annoying and have no connection to our content.
Plus, they just jam those things in wherever they see fit.
We listened when you said you didn't like them. So now, we're directly appealing to you, our dear listener. Please consider an Audible subscription to help support Movies We Like and the Next Reel's family of podcasts.
I've been using Audible along with my family for decades now. I love it, and I've read hundreds of books through it. Couldn't be more pleased with their service, and I know you'll love it too. Head to thenextreel.com/audible and get your free trial. It really helps us out. And you have a world of over 200,000 audiobooks open to you.
So much great material available. Dive in with a free trial and get your first free audiobook at thenextreel.com/audible.
Start listening to amazing audiobooks of your favorite movie source material with your first free audiobook today. That's thenextreel.com/audible. Andy, I know you've never been happier than when you're sitting by a warm fire, snuggled up in a flannel and basking in the glow of an old-school budget spreadsheet.
It is a special day I can shut down the world for a little me time.
In a world full of applications, why do these antiquated documents and spreadsheets still run the world? And why haven't they been updated in over 50 years? That's why we want to talk about Coda.
Coda is a new kind of doc that brings words, data, and teams together. It comes with a set of building blocks that anyone can combine to create a doc as powerful as an app.
Coda runs our entire business here at True Story FM, from show scheduling across dozens of podcasts and scripts for thousands of episodes, to budgets and plans and wikis and more.
Coda lets us see our business in a new light. If you'd like to shine a light on productivity in your business and save money along the way, check out Coda today at thenextreel.com/Coda. Welcome to the Next Reel's Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
That's Pete Wright.
On today's episode, we have invited storyboard and concept artist Anson Jew to talk about The Reflecting Skin, a movie he likes.
Sometimes terrible things happen quite naturally.
Look at its skin. Yeah. Quick, she's coming.
Are you a scarecrow's son?
No.
I was hoping you were. We'll be seeing you. Would you like that?
Every time you make your ma cry, you kill an angel. I make my ma cry all the time. Sometimes I just look at her and she cries. Any vampires around these parts, Pa?
Wouldn't be at all surprised.
Tell me, how old do you think I am?
50.
Oh, no, I'm older than that. I'm 200 years old.
You see your face in it.
Shut up! Listen, you little bastard, I love her! You understand? I love her!
Poor Seth. It's all so horrible, isn't it? The nightmare of childhood.
She's got him now, Aben. There's nothing I can do.
Innocence can be hell.
Anson, welcome to the show.
Hey, Anson.
Great to be here.
Well, we are excited to talk to you about this movie, which is a really interesting film to watch and to discuss. But before we jump into the movie, let's talk a little bit about you and your history. So you do storyboard and concept art. How did you kind of get that start? Did you always want to be an artist and it kind of led to that, or kind of what was the journey that you took?
It was one of the very few things that I could do as a kid better than most other kids. It was pretty much a failure at things like sports and stuff, but I could draw. So I knew whatever I was going to do, I was going to end up in some kind of art-related field, as a magazine illustrator or a comic book artist or something like that. And that was kind of the goal. Growing up in school, doing publications and stuff. But it turned out that the first job I ended up getting, first big real job, was working at a video game company at LucasArts. Previously, I had worked at a magazine, but the first, I'd say, full-time 40-hour a week job was working as an animator and lead artist at LucasArts. And, video games had just started. This is like early 90s, late 80s. It was basically like filmmaking, a lot of what we were doing, animating, setting up shots, storyboarding them. And I lasted there for 9 years. But, growing up, my true love was really film. I really was into special effects. I was basically a child of Star Wars as a... when Star Wars came out in 1977, I was just about the right age for that to have an effect on me, and I wanted to make movies. So by the early 2000s, I moved to Los Angeles and said, let's do storyboards. My brother actually I have an identical twin brother who is also a storyboard and concept artist, and he was working at ILM for a while, and he moved to Los Angeles and was getting a good amount of work there. So I kind of followed along. So here I am, and I've worked on dozens of films: Sky Captain, Prince Caspian, Curse of Chucky.
Absolutely. Warcraft, Clifford, Passengers, like your Wonder Woman, like your catalog is extensive in terms of movies, certainly movies we've seen and are enamored by the design of. I'm curious what does the job look like right now when you get a new project like this? Because we've heard all the stories of how storyboarding is evolving and changing, and the use of all different kinds of technology to previs movies. And how does that impact you? I'm looking at your Christopher Robin stills on your webpage, and they are beautiful line art still.
Well, a lot of times it's faster just to do a drawing. And so even if you're going to be doing previs with 3D models, it still takes time to build all the models, build all the sets. There's like a lot of downtime. So you might as well just get started coming up with kind of visual ideas before any of that happens. So that's just like a lot of time and resources before anybody sees anything that even resembles movies. Storyboards are still faster in that way. We're being asked to do a lot more like animatic type storyboards. I'm seeing that trend happening, where you're not just drawing the boards on a piece of paper to hand to the crew, which is still something that happens, especially like in TV. But they're also asking you to sequence it in time and things like that.
They're asking you to do that. So you're not giving it to somebody else to plug it in.
I actually don't do that quite a lot, but I do see that happening with a lot of people that I know in the industry. They're being asked to do that.
Interesting.
But I do it just for presentation purposes. I think people just tend to like to look at things in time with music more than just looking at the image. So
Forgive the nerdy kind of pedestrian question, but I am a nerd and kind of pedestrian. So, what's your tool set? Like, what is your tool set today? Are you a Wacom tablet guy? Are you still pen and paper? Like, how do you do the job? What do you count on?
when I first started, I was pencil and paper. Made a kind of slow, hard transition, slow, difficult transition to going all digital. But I eventually got to all digital, and I use a lot of people use Photoshop. I tend to use Sketchbook Pro because I don't like having huge, complicated menus all over my artwork. So
Yeah.
Sketchbook, for the purposes of doing storyboards, is actually really good because it has a very simple, intuitive interface. So all you really need to do storyboards is something that can make lines and fill in grays and stuff. If you've got that, that's really in the end all you need. Just a few small tools, and most every drawing tool out there has that. So I kind of tend to choose the simplest one. All that other stuff just kind of makes me dizzy, so I just don't want it in my face.
Yeah, I only know Sketchbook from its iPad app is really lovely.
Yeah.
When you start a project, this is also kind of a nerdy question. Like, do you have a standard aspect ratio that you're working in, or do you find out like what their aspect ratio is that they're planning on shooting so you can make sure you're drawing the same scale?
Yeah, definitely. You want to work with the production. What they're asking for, and they'll usually figure out what they want or what they're heading for. If you're doing it in TV, it's almost automatically you're doing
16:9 these days.
16:9. Yeah. But for film, usually the director will have an idea of what he wants and how he wants it to look, and you just kind of go with that. A lot of what we're doing is just listening and trying to visualize what the director wants, and we just kind of bring our own interpretation to it because I'm not that person, but I can bring my own experience to the table, and between myself and the director, you get something that you wouldn't get before. That's where the magic happens a little bit.
I want to talk about that magic though briefly, because I think that's the thing that I have trouble wrapping my head around. That the director and say the writers come to you and you're talking about just here's what it generally is going to look and feel like, and then I look at your catalog of images and I see the before and after, and my mind is blown at the connection between what you put down in a sketch and what gets created on screen. Do you remember the first time what you had in your head showed up in a movie? For you, like, did that give you an emotional kick in the gut? Because
oh yeah. I mean, that's I think a lot of storyboard artists, when they watch a movie that they've worked on, their thing is, how close do they stick to my board? How close do they stick to their board? And that it's not going to go. I mean, we're not there on the set actually with the cinematographer. We don't know everything that's happening on the ground and everything that they can see. So. We can only take a stab at it, but when we see something, that looks exactly like the way I drew this out. So that really says, I made my mark.
Legacy.
And that's especially with live action. I worked in animation as well. In animation, actually, the job is slightly different, and what you're practically directing. If you're doing it for animation, they're following your drawings pretty much directly, but it's a little bit different between live action and animation.
How is it different for video game storyboarding in terms of the work and the process that you do?
That's actually not that different. Most of the time, if you're doing storyboards for a video game, it's usually for cutscenes, which are just like short snippets of
short films.
Movie. They're short films. There may be the case where there's like a branching structure where if this happens, then this and this. So you start at one point and then start boarding for all the different versions of things that might happen. But for the most part, it's pretty much like doing a regular like an animated board. The animators will have their own take on things, but your initial vision is kind of what sets things in motion.
Fascinating.
Wow. How far into the process, or I mean, usually it's a pre-production job, this kind of storyboarding concept art. But I mean, I know there are, especially in films like, Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, which was like so designed from start to finish. Like, have there been projects like where you have found yourself like coming back over and over during production to help kind of revisualize or come up with something as the project is actually going?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sky Captain is definitely one of them. Usually if something, I mean, what we're talking about with Sky Captain is something like, it's almost an animated film.
Right.
So, all the backgrounds and everything you see there is all fake. So everything really has to be thought out ahead of time. That was one of the few areas where like the entire film was boarded from beginning to end. In most movies, they hire a storyboard artist just to basically do tricky action scenes or effect scenes. In this particular movie, it was boarded from beginning to end. In the editing process, they basically made an animatic from my boards, and replaced each shot as they came in from the animators. So, obviously things don't go exactly as I draw them, but it's kind of like the starting process. I come up with this shot, but maybe the animator came up with something that he sees as being a little bit better.
The nerve, right? The nerve.
Filmmaking is not a place for ego, so
right, for sure.
You gotta let the other members of the team get their too.
That's why I love the whole idea of just feeling that experience of the thing that you sketched on screen. Like, that just is a bit of joy in being even a part of the process, let alone conceiving of these ideas that expand so far beyond your pencil. That's extraordinary.
Well, and it's such a unique art form anyway. I mean, I when I was, before I went into film school, I picked up a book that was it was like shot by shot or film in motion or something like that. And I was just fascinated. It was all kind of teaching you about storyboarding and like it maybe not necessarily, I mean, maybe for people who wanted to become storyboard artists, but I think largely just so you could understand what was in them and how you would interpret them and everything. And just like the way that storyboard artists capture the movement, because it's not necessarily always a still frame. There's camera moving, there's people moving, there's so many things that are taking place. And just the way that a storyboard artist captures like the energy of action and everything that's going on, I find fascinating. And it's an art form all by itself that I think it's one of those midway art forms that never really gets the praise that it probably deserves, because nobody's going to the movies to look at storyboards. They're all going to look at the finished product, just like a script. It's like the script is just a midway point. But I find it to be such an integral part and so fascinating what the storyboard artists and concept artists do in order to help people realize what it is they're trying to kind of capture in that final product.
Right, yeah. Like whenever you read a book or whenever you read a comic book, I think most people have the experience of they're playing a movie in their mind. Even if they're just watching still pictures in their mind, they're developing their own motion and stuff. As a reader, if you're reading a book, you've got your own camera angles in there. And as an artist, I have the kind of ability to express that on paper in a way that other people can see it. So it's like seeing a movie come to life. You imagine it in your mind, and then it's great that somebody else can kind of peek in and see what your idea of things are.
On one of these bigger movies, let's say you're working on something like Wonder Woman. How many plates are you doing for the film?
Oh, it varies from job to job. Depends on the complexity of the show and how many days you're working on it.
Something like more for Sky Captain versus something that like Christopher Robin.
I worked on Sky Captain like 8 to 9 months. I worked on Wonder Woman for probably less than a month.
Wow.
And maybe about a month.
Yeah.
Most storyboards do between like say 16 to 25 boards a day. And, however many days that encompasses is
Wow.
A lot of boards.
That Wonder Woman was. Obviously, if you know any of this story, I'd love to hear it. But just in terms of a compliment on the production, like when I look at your storyboards, I found the closing credits montage in Wonder Woman one of the most extraordinary closing credits, beautiful closing credit sequences of any of the big superhero movies. And I'm looking at your storyboards, and some of them are plate for plate what they did to animate in beautiful, like chalk watercolor kind of a montage at the end of that sequence, and that is something like I've forgotten so much of the movie itself, but I've never forgotten that end sequence because of the beauty, and it feels like homage. It is sending to the original artwork that was created for that thing. It's just gorgeous. Do you have any sense of if they used or were inspired by your work directly?
I feel like I was actually on there very early in the process. So I think a lot of stuff that I actually did ended up on essentially the cutting room floor on that particular movie. But they may have recycled them for like the second movie. Say like I have a arena sword fight, which they didn't really have. They didn't put that aspect of the Wonder Woman origin story in the first movie, but they did try to incorporate elements of that into the second movie. Sometimes I think that they might have been looking at my boards as maybe a jumping off point to do stuff for the second movie, because I designed this armor for Diana to wear in her arena fight that was kind of bird-like, and then in the second movie I saw, well, that looks quite a bit like it. I don't read the comic book, so I mean, whether or not I did something that looks like the comics, I don't know, but it certainly wasn't intentional. But if not, maybe they saw something in my boards.
And I think this gives us a good jumping off point to start talking about the film that you wanted to chat about today, which is Philip Ridley's The Reflecting Skin from 1990. I had never seen this before. Pete had never seen this before. What a fascinating film, and certainly one that allows for a lot to talk about. How did this film enter your life? Is it something that you saw in 1990 when it first came out?
I do remember a long time ago seeing a review from I saw Roger Ebert review it on TV, but it never came into my town. There didn't seem to be any way to see it, but I did hear from a bunch of other concept storyboard artists. In this case, I think my brother was having some conversation with another concept artist, Ian McCaig, about some movies that were visually stunning. Reflecting Skin came out, and then I think this was during the video age, and when I saw it on in a video store, I was able to kind of like bring a VHS copy home and really take a look at it. I think Ian may have brought a copy into the conference room at LucasArts and had a little screening for a few of the artists to kind of look at it. I think that was maybe the very first time I saw it. Visuals alone, any artist just looks at that and just says, "Oh, that's just friggin' amazing." So I made sure that I went to my video store, and whenever it came up, I would see it. I think it was one of those things where it just, for whatever reason, didn't get good distribution or whatever it was. But I just loved it for the visuals, and the story was also just amazing as well. But one of the things I noticed visually was how much it just felt like this thing was a moving version of like an Andrew Wyeth painting. Everything there looked exactly like an Andrew Wyeth painting, or maybe like a James Wyeth painting.
It's visually stunning from start to end. Looking at Philip Ridley's career, I mean, it's Philip Ridley is definitely I think you would call him perhaps more a straight up storyteller rather than a filmmaker. I mean, this is a person who has worked in books, in cinema, in theater, in song, in poetry, like is not somebody who has settled on a particular format. Is just somebody who likes to explore art in all of its aspects. And this is his first feature film. He had written The Craze, which came out the same year as this and then wrote and directed this. And as especially a first film, like, it just like from that opening image of that golden wheat field all the way to that final image of our young boy like screaming to the heavens and his hands in the air. It's just like every single frame. I'm like, it's kind of shocking to me when I see a first film like this. And I'm like, where did Philip Ridley go? Because it is so visual. Like this is a visual storyteller who knows how to capture image in so many interesting ways all through the film. Like I was constantly astounded by choices. And I don't know if I was like, I wonder if this is one of the reasons that you picked this movie, because it is just so visual. And as a storyboard artist, I'm like, it's easy to eat up like any frame of this, like from the trucking shots to just the way that, people were captured. I mean, it's just
it's got
beautiful.
The extreme close-ups. Like, he just loves extreme close-ups of the kids, of the screaming, of the blood on Dolphin's face from the frog. Come on, frog. What are we doing with that? See, who's ever done that?
Right. I mean, if you think of it, just the fact that there's so much to look at, despite the fact that really, I mean, there's no big action scenes in it. There's no physical, gore or violence or supernatural stuff. None of that is there. It's really just people talking. And how do you make, they're talking in a very limited environment. So how do you make that interesting? And he made everything interesting. It's like every shot was just fascinating to look at.
And I feel like the intentionality of the film, the intention of making a horror story out of the beliefs of children that happens to be tied into the real world events, right? The fact that this supposed vampirism in Seth's mind is actually radiation deterioration from exposure to radiation from the bomb is kind of an extraordinary connection. Like I really loved that bit of the fable of the movie. And I don't think I connected with the overall movie as well. Like I didn't love the performances of the kids, and I think Viggo Mortensen outclassed this movie in every shot. But it's so gorgeous, and what it was trying to do is really special. Like I walked away from it just kind of a little bit confused. I would say appropriately confused, but enamored by the lusciousness of the plains and the subject isolation and the structures that they found and captured, and all of that sort of absolved any of the sins of the film in my eye for the overacting of the police chief, who felt sort of comical to me. I don't know when I was supposed to take him seriously with the eye patch and the hand that didn't. It felt like I was in a Young Frankenstein for a minute.
Well, it was a little bit, I mean, on the oddball side, where I think this is like David Lynch.
Yes,
the David Lynch type of thing where things were a little bit odd, but there's nothing supernatural or weird happening. There's nothing there that can't be explained by real life situations. So it's in a very Lynchian way is basically just exploring the strangeness of reality. Real life, very, very odd, can be very, very odd
and grotesque in its own way. I mean, lots of heads and skulls and stuff, but that's just the West.
Age of the main characters in this story just is 8 going on 9. That at that age you're really just trying to sort out reality from like imagination, things, and things are always being hidden from you. You don't know right from wrong, and kids kids at that age are capable of incredible cruelty. And I remember when I was a kid, I wasn't much different. I did some pretty horrifying things looking back at it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Anson. We'd like to litigate those right now on the show. But that was it. And when you to that point specifically, like the real horror of this movie, the most horrific sequence in this movie to me is when the 3 kids are sitting in the barn together and they get to the point screaming, Eben is crying, and the close-ups on that face, it's shot like a cultist sort of event. Like it's just horrible. The unspeakable cruelty to others, like before they've been able to turn on the empathy vibe, right, is extraordinary. It's just awful. And I don't know if by the end of the movie, as he's screaming, the last surviving child in this community, right, if that is a signal that he's learned anything, that he's changed and grown up in a way beyond dealing with his extraordinary grief.
I think so. I think this is where he finally has a taste into the real reality, because he had a hand in Dolphin Blue's death. He hadn't processed, what part was real and what part was his imagination, and basically he let her die.
And Kim too, right? He saw he would, that, like, watching those pieces come together and form grief on him is kind of extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well, and I do wonder if there's an element of that final moment from young Seth when he's screaming there. I mean, obviously his brother is now devastated as well. I mean, his life is in ruins, and in the process of all of this, and because of the way that he's been seeing the world and seeing things unfold, thinking that it's her when it's really these guys in this Cadillac that keep driving around. They're still out there. He has not stopped them, and
he could be next.
It's entirely possible that he is next. Yeah. And it's, I don't know. I found that to be such a fascinating growing up journey that he has here. And it's almost like his childhood, like we're witnessing his childhood end at that moment when he sees Dolphin dead in the field there. And that run and scream that he has is like his awakening as somebody who is able to process things and is now screaming at the world for realizing, like, oh my God, all of this is something else, and I can't believe that I am a part of this. I mean, it's incredibly powerful.
It's like being born and entering the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
It's and it's just a very scary thought that we all go through it.
There's also an angle of the film where, I mean, it takes place in the 50s, right after World War II. Cameron comes home partway through the film. He had been working, on the bomb, and Pete kind of, alluded to the fact that he is suffering from radiation poisoning from all of his work on that. But there's also this side of the story that is dealing with homosexuality, and his father, who, I don't know, the way that I read it is likely his father had been in a gay relationship with somebody. I read online, somebody had thought that it might have been Dolphin's husband. And I was like, well, that's an interesting perspective, and thought maybe that's why he hung himself. But there's definitely this element of the world of the 50s and the attitude of homosexuality at the time, and the way that anything unacceptable like that, you have to kind of like bury. And, this woman, Seth's mom, ends up marrying him right away, quickly, to kind of help him through all of that. And there's an interesting side of like getting into a relationship with somebody that you love, who is never really going to be able to love you. But it's like this, the way that society kind of forced these relationships to kind of become where it just ended up being a difficult relationship for everybody all through it. And that scene of the father when he like immolates himself, he drinks all the gasoline and just blows himself up. I mean, it's just like, it really kind of like hit me like, whoa, like that having to live the way that he was living for as long as he had. And then that final point when he suddenly was being accused of these things again, it like was his breaking point. I mean, it's powerful the way that the film is portraying some of these things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all people are just trying to get along, and they find themselves persecuted, for something that they probably didn't do. I mean, if you do one thing, everything else that you do becomes suspect, even if you're clearly dead. That type of thing is just the persecution. For all we know, maybe the mother was also, when she was a lesbian, for all we know.
Yeah.
And just trying to avoid some kind of persecution.
Can I get a reading from you guys on the ossified dead fetus that Kim and Seth find? That is just a found object in the barn. Do we have any connection? Did you read any connection to that fetus to the rest of the story that I missed?
Well, to me, it just seems like, okay, that's another area where the entire community is persecuting somebody. So this person couldn't deal with, just had to get rid of the baby in some way. say, well, okay, well, it died, or somebody had to abandon a baby and keep everything a secret. There might have been some kind of shame happening there.
Right.
Somebody had to abandon a baby, most likely in that community, because they would be persecuted for some reason.
Interesting. So it's just a signal to another signal of the hardships, the cultural hardships of small town living.
Mm-hmm.
That they're just sort of trusting us to walk along with. That doesn't necessarily need to be connected to the story. It just needs to be a sign.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know, the way that I read it also is like it's a sign of the childhood or not really misunderstanding, but just like the lack of understanding of what's going on in the real world, and finding these things that, are grotesques, doing what they do to the frog, finding this ossified baby wrapped up in newspaper that he keeps under his bed as a connection to Aiden that becomes, for him, this is Aiden's angel, and it becomes his communication point. And it is so interesting that none of the reality of the world hits him at all. And I mean, his parents are not people that he can really talk to. I mean, well, one, his dad had killed himself by that point in the film. But two, his mom is just like this broken woman who he clearly doesn't have any relationship with her. She thinks she has a relationship with Cameron until he comes home, and we realize, well, there's really not much of a relationship there either. So she is kind of this isolated thing. And so he has nobody other than, I'm just going to attach everything to this thing.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think that's pretty astute.
I think the danger of it, on the other side of that coin, is that the significance of a human fetus, it becomes Chekhov's human fetus, right? Like there is an expectation that something will tie because of the significance of it being a human fetus that he found. And while I absolutely agree, and I see everything that you're saying, I do think it can read as a loose end, that we never got to see what the connection was to that thing that has an outsized significance in sort of Western human culture. Right? That he never once thought to go tell somebody, that we never once got a connection to the actual story. So I totally can read it in that sort of David Lynchian, we're going to trust you to just go with the story. But there, that could also be an open thread.
Well, I can see that. I didn't really, to me, I kind of like totally more or less accepted it as just something that was, maybe left behind for somebody had some reason to do it, but we don't. It's not really important that we know what the reason is, I think. But
it makes me question every other parent that we come across, right?
We get a good look at them, and I think we get the idea of what kind of people. There's not a lot of people in the neighborhood, but they do have,
they got secrets.
They have a collective personality, and I think
I mean, if the sheriff was that sheriff in my town, I would probably be pretty tight-lipped as well. Like, what a creepy dude. Although I know, Pete, you thought it was kind of comical, but I'm like, there's something so perfect about this level of this sheriff, with the eye that had been stung out by a wasp, with the hand that had been, I can't remember what, it was a snapper turtle ripped his hand off, and then the dog almost chewed his ear off. It was so, you said it was kind of almost too comical, but there was something about that level, and then tied into this story with such absurdist things, like finding this dead baby that he is talking to, that it ended up becoming such a part of just kind of like this strange, Lynchian, I guess, world, but it's just like everything is so off here. And I didn't end up having an issue with the comedy of the sheriff, and maybe it's because his monologue about all of these things, and he's just like, just all this crap keeps happening, and here I am. And, I don't know. I ended up buying into it as much as I bought into anything else.
Possible. It's all very unlikely, but it's totally possible, which is the point of the movie, is that even the strangest things, even the things that we see as strange are quite normal, actually.
Yeah, right.
I feel like there's such a sort of a biblical connection, right? Like as I'm watching the sheriff go through that monologue, I keep thinking this is the story of Job if he had been put in the position of being a small town sheriff after all of these things keep happening to him. Like he's literally physically dismembered slowly but surely, and yet he is still trying to do his vision of justice, But that's sort of the whole town is put upon by events. How does it survive, right? That's kind of the ultimate question is, does the town survive? And we haven't even we haven't really really investigated the Cadillac yet, right? The Cadillac is this injection of outsiders to the town, testing its resilience, and it's doing so in the most violent way, attacking the children of the town subversively, like ripping the foundation out from under the fabric of whatever this town is to become. It's like erasing the future before the future gets a chance to assert itself. And that is yet another sort of stake in the heart of this small town life. Can it survive after such an infection, such a violation? That's a big question.
Right. And that's the other thing. I mean, I don't think it was an accident that they made that the car, that gorgeous black Cadillac, the whole idea of something that is extremely destructive is also at the same time very, very sexy. Right. You see the first time the car drives up, you see the look on Seth's face when he sees that thing driving up. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh, just the way that he runs his hand along it as he's going down to fill it up.
Sure. Yeah. It's just like, that's how, a lot of the ills in our society happen. Something sexy comes up and we're all fascinated by it. And then when we find out this is probably something we don't want in our midst.
Well, and that it is both sexy and sexual, right? That's the other side of the violation to this town. Is the first time he sees Seth, right? He runs his finger across his face and on his nose as he's exploring him in a way that is intimate, beyond friendly, right? It is inappropriate, and as much as this movie is addressing the views of sexuality and demonizing sexuality and what that leads to, this infection is doing the exact same thing, right? It's like coming in and forcing itself in this way that is inappropriate, again, toward children.
Yeah.
Although to that end, it's interesting that they also are the ones who end up killing Dolphin.
I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
I admit I was surprised by that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about a Dolphin. I don't know if I've seen a lot of Lindsay Duncan, but what do you think of her portrayal here as Dolphin Blue?
I thought she was really good. I mean, it's a very strange role. This kind of a tortured widow and who has kind of some maybe odd poetic ways about her. Like a lot of stuff. I can't imagine this would be a very easy movie to act in, because there are a lot of things where it could get comical if you don't play it right. And I think she did a great job of pulling that off. And plus her look, and the way they made her look in this movie, she totally looks like Helga, from the Helga paintings of Andrew Wyeth's Helga. She looks exactly like that, and I don't know. I thought it was an interesting character.
She's interesting. She is one of those faces. She was in one of my favorite movies, About Time. She was Mum in About Time, which was a terrific little time travel romance. But she's been in more stuff than that. I mean, she had a bit in Star Wars.
Yeah, she was in Star Wars as like a female 3PO.
Yeah. Also a voice in the recent series as Octavia in His Dark Materials, the Pullman adaptation, which was just lovely.
I feel like I've seen more of her performances in recent years than anything at this time. Like, I don't think probably it wasn't until like the last decade or so that I've seen some of her films. And so I don't know, seeing her at this point in her career, I just found she has a really unique look. And as a British person in this rural American community, like she already feels like an outsider. She looks like an outsider. Like she's either walking in like all black or all white. Like she does feel vampiric or angelic. Like there's this dance that I think Ridley is taking with her. And I don't know, there's just such a mystery to her. I can see why right out of the gate, like you have the moment when she's coming in, the whole frog incident, which is definitely one that I'll never forget. But then you can see why Seth has this draw to her. And as he and his other friends are running away, he's the one who stops and looks back. And I don't know if there was a little hint of like guilt. I think there probably was a hint of guilt that he had, but also I just think that there is this draw to this mysterious woman that he has that he can't kind of ever quite get away from, that really drives him through the rest of the film. It's like this draw, but also like this fear of this woman. And then you get into like scenes like when he comes over to her house to apologize, and she has that fantastic, heart-wrenching, frightening monologue. It's amazing. Like I don't know. What did you think of that scene when she's talking to him and like showing him her box of treasures, we'll call them, from her dead husband?
It's teeth, man. You call them treasures. It's teeth.
It's teeth
and hair.
It's just yeah, but yeah, I think it was just the fact. I mean, the fact that she tells him, yeah, we used to set put firecrackers on cats' tails and watch them run. I've met kids like that, in my life, that actually happened. And it just kind of just shows you that the world is full of all kinds of, as adults, you look at this unimaginable cruelty, but as kids, you haven't figured that out yet. And it's amazing. It's just an interesting look.
Well, and that's the most interesting connection too, right? As kids, you haven't figured out that out yet, but she's not a kid.
She's not a kid. No, we never figured it out. I don't think, really.
Right.
We just put more fences around it and stuff.
Yeah. Compartmentalize.
We never do. Look at all the adults in there.
It comes out in different ways.
They're tormented by it. Yeah, it comes out different ways. It's all there. It's all people are cruel. They're afraid to hide from things, and it never really stops. It just gets a little bit more sophisticated, I guess.
Yeah, and she gets to be that manifestation of it, and also so much of that part of her personality feels unlocked by grief. And I think this movie does, it's handling grief through every different character perspective in different ways, right? You just never quite know how it is going to appear when it comes around the next corner, whether it's Seth who's going to be confronting it because his friends are dying, whether it's Dolphin dealing with the death of her husband, or Cameron dealing with absolute grief as a veteran and the stuff that he saw in the nice islands, as the movie calls it, or Mom dealing with the grief of the loss of her family. She's dealing with grief from the moment we start the movie. She's already stricken with grief in a way that comes out as violent and unsettling to the rest of her family. It's jarring.
Well, and just like the people themselves, like, keeping that thread of violence running through where people kind of like, you never quite get away from that. I mean, even just the way watching Cameron treat his mother, treat his brother, like it always is coming through in ways where he has never quite figured out how to get past that either. Like he violently shoves his brother down when he kind of scares Dolphin off as they're talking at the cemetery. His mom hugs him a little too long and he kind of like freaks out on her. Like I don't know, I just found it to be so interesting the way that the character interactions portray that level of like, yeah, we're either exploding frogs or we're, having these types of interactions with people because we just have not quite figured it out.
Well, I think what they're trying to do there is basically, just show we are just a whole world full of wounded creatures, and that when you do find love, it's a very precious thing, and you have to really, don't take it for granted, that if you find somebody who loves you, then you are a very lucky person indeed. And that's I think that's the point that's also in Dolphin's speech. You know, and when all this shit happens, just pray you have somebody who loves you.
That was quite the speech. Like she really is going down that road all the way as you go into dementia and angina, and it's like, yeah,
he's still 8. Still 8. I love that sequence where he peeks in and he sees them, and Cameron is completely naked in her lap, and she's just like touching his skin, kind of caressing him, and it is a completely non-sexual endeavor at that point that also looks like an act of vampirism, and I thought that was just a really sort of interesting contrast in sort of childhood view, adult view, once again, sort of celebrating what that conflict looks like. To them as adults, it's an act of loving one another through hardship. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
Andy, normally we talk about award season first, but I want to talk to you about derivative works. Apparently this movie has inspired a lot of other people.
I think that speaks of the director, who also is somebody who works in so many different mediums, that he created something that was so visual and so provoking in a number of ways that particularly bands seem to have latched on to it. And there have been a number of bands that have been inspired from it, and to the point where at least 3 of them, there's a British band, Coil, there is the Canadian musician Phil Western, and also the industrial/noise rock duo Uniform, all of whom use dialogue excerpts in some of their music.
Wow.
And then there's a Scottish band, Riverhead, that pulled a still from the movie to use on the cover of one of their albums. So yeah, I think it's just interesting that it's drawn people to it in interesting ways.
Yeah, I do. That's fascinating. Yeah, and it seems like I don't listen to any of those bands. I don't have a sense of what kind of music that is, but it strikes me that they're all in sort of the same crowd with this movie. Sort of culty, strong, small legion of fans.
Yeah, I think that it definitely feels that way, for sure.
How to do it award season, after all.
This was a film festival film. That's predominantly where it got its recognition, at the Sitges Catalonian International Film Festival. It was nominated for 3. It walked away with 2 of them. It was nominated for Best Film, but lost to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Lindsay Duncan won Best Actress, and it won Best Cinematography. At the Locarno International Film Festival, Philip Ridley won the Silver Leopard. He won the Fipresci Prize and the CICAE Award, and then the film was also nominated for the Golden Leopard, but lost to Random Waltz. Last but not least, over at the Stockholm Film Festival, Ridley won the Fipresci Prize there as well, and was nominated for the Bronze Horse, but lost to The Natural History of Parking Lots. So it sounds like a film festival film. And, to the point where when this film premiered at Cannes, we didn't talk about this, but when it played, the critics declared it already a cult film before they even walked out of the room.
Yeah. Before the cult knew it.
Yeah, right. They were calling.
Does that really count? That doesn't count. You can't call your shot on a cult film. You need a cult first.
Yeah. Well, they were right, I think. It took its time, but I think that there's probably a cult.
Which comes first, Andy? The film or the cult? That's the question. I guess we'll never know now. All right. How did it do at the box office?
This is a tough one. I don't know if it's because it's Canadian and I just couldn't find the information, or because it's more of an independent film, which often means you can't find the information, but just there is not a lot of information out there about its finances. I did find that Ridley did have a budget of $1.5 million or $3.5 million in today's dollars. The movie premiered at Cannes in 1990, then opened in Toronto September 9th, 1990, and then the U.S. June 28th, 1991, in a limited release opposite The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and the limited release of Europa. It looks like it earned only $17,000 domestically, but again, I can't really tell if that's domestically. Is that Canada domestic? Is that international? I don't know. Sometimes when you get domestic figures, it includes Canada, but I just can't tell anything. So, I guess, unfortunately, that's all I have with this one.
I think it's made even more difficult for you because in Canada they budget all movies in kindness, and the exchange value to US dollars is very difficult. It's like kindness and syrup.
That's so true. So true.
God, I love Canada so much. Anyway.
What do you think of the title? I know it kind of ties in with everything going on, kind of the reactions to post-World War II, dropping the A-bomb. You've got that photo of that baby that, he as Cam is telling his brother about the photo and how this baby had kind of that silver skin like a mirror. He never really kind of fills him in on everything as to like what led to that and everything. But I mean, it's an interesting title. I feel like it kind of ties into the vampirism and also just kind of like the inward look and everything. I mean, what's your sense of the title?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that, there's that sequence where he's showing them the 3 photographs. And the way I interpret that is that there's one photo of him, of Seth and Cameron together, which represents the world he knows. Then there's the picture of the kid with the burnt face, and that's the world that is unknown to him. Then there's the naked pinup girl, and that's the world that's hidden from him. It's the things that are unknown to you, and I think that's what they're trying to get across with the title. We're looking at things that are unknown to you, and you're trying to get it to fit it into maybe one of the other 2 categories. I mean, that's kind of the way I kind of see. We're looking at the world that is unknown, and we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think Andy, you posted something in our community when we watched the movie. Maybe it was in your Letterboxd review. It was something about how it's a movie that starts with vampirism, with like leaning in on vampirism. But man, that is just the start. And I think for me that's one of the sort of more blatant tools of the title, which is we're going to make you think that it's something that it's absolutely not. I think it works. It's a lovely little onion that, only at the end of the film does it start to sort of peel itself for all the different sort of ways you can look at it. It kind of does what titles do when they work best.
Yeah, such a fascinating film. I'm thrilled that you brought this to us to talk about, Anson. It is such a unique film to discuss. Thank you so much for picking it. I'm glad that this was one that was on your radar so that we could have a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, I always like to, kind of maybe be a little champion of films that probably need a bigger look than they normally wouldn't have. So
yeah,
I think. Even if it's not the greatest film in the world, I think it deserves a better look than it got in its original release.
It's fairly rare that somebody has brought a movie to us that, like, not only not seen but had legitimately never heard of. Like this was completely out of the blue. It's a great little rewarding watch, and for all of those reasons, for sure, thank you.
Okay.
I would love a retrospective that included this because this is one I would love to see on the big screen. Going back to the visuals, I mean, it's a stunning film from start to finish, and having a chance to just kind of see it up on the big screen and let it wash over you, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so what are you up to these days? Do you have anything you want to plug as we're wrapping up? Any places you want to direct people to check you out on the web? Anything like that?
Right now, we're in the middle of a strike, so Hollywood's a little shut down right now. So there's not a lot of work for me. In the meantime, I've been posting stuff on the internet of work that I've done. So if you want to see that, one good place to go is to go to Instagram. And on Instagram, I am. You can find me under Anson Jew Art. Or go to Twitter and it's Anson Artist, or X, I guess it is now.
We'll always call it Twitter.
It'll always be Twitter to me, right?
The next movie that I've worked on that's going to have a release is an indie horror film called Slaughterhouse. Which is, I don't know, if it's a comedy horror thing. It's not like a CG thing. It's old school. Puppets of a sloth, a killer sloth in a sorority house. So I imagine if you are if you like like Chucky, the Curse. I worked on Curse of Chucky. If you like any of the Chucky films, I'm sure you probably get a kick out of Slaughterhouse, which is, I guess, coming up at the end of this month.
I'm looking at the poster and the trailer's playing in silence right now as you're saying it, and I cannot get to this movie fast enough. That is amazing. I can't wait to see your sketches when those finally make it to Instagram or Flickr. Like, I can't wait to see the initial boards of this film.
Right, yeah.
That is fantastic. Well, we're big supporters of everything going on out there with the WGA and SAG-AFTRA, and I know it's affecting so many people outside of those particular unions. And we certainly hope that everything gets resolved sometime soon so everybody can kind of get back to work. So, fingers crossed with all of that.
Right, yeah. AI is not going to be able to do your next Reflecting Skin or even Slaughterhouse. So let's try to make sure that our writers who actually lived a real life can keep on writing and make work that people can really relate to, rather than just a repositioning of visual and cultural elements that are just kind of shuffled around.
Yeah.
It's you want something that really speaks to real humanity, like Reflecting Skin, like the film or not. It does speak to something that is actually very real.
Yeah.
I have a very difficult time imagining AI understanding the complexity of human emotion quite well enough to produce something like the Reflecting Skin. That's
right.
I just don't see it.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, Anson, again, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
For everyone else out there, we hope that you liked the show, and certainly hope that you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like.
Right on.
Movies We Like is a part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. The music is Chonk Clap by Out of Flux. Find the show at truestory.fm and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and Threads at The Next Reel. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we always appreciate it if you drop one in there for us. See you next time. It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
Movies We Like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise. We aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.